Number 10. Bishop. Bishop's powers are based in energy manipulation, as so many other heroes from his time period were. And no, I don't mean the future, I mean the time in which he was created in the comics. The 90s. What a time. Still, Lucas Bishop is one of the few heroes who withstood the test of time and is currently a main character in the comics today, appearing as part of the Marauders team and as Red Queen Kitty Pryde's Red Bishop within the Hellfire Trading Company. I'm so happy that Bishop got to be a bishop. It's too perfect. It's so perfect. Bishop is considered an alpha level mutant and is often known for brandishing his future XSE guns, which he can recharge with any energy he has absorbed and stored. Pretty useful. We're talking near unlimited ammo, as long as he has some kind of energy coming his way. Number 9. Wolverine, aka Laura Kinney, formerly known as X-23. Laura has since taken up the mantle of Wolverine after her genetic father Logan. She too is now known as Wolverine, so we get to have 2 of them on the island of Krakoa. Yay! Just like that, they gave Laura that title, but didn't feel like they had to take it away from her after Logan himself was using it again in his own self-titled series. It feels very respectful to let her keep it. Also, Laura definitely deserves our respect, as she is not only extremely durable like Logan, possessing her own healing factor, but is also an immensely skilled and deadly fighter, who you would likely not want to mess with, being trained since birth. Wolverine is currently part of the newest X-Men roster, featured in the 2021 book, but has also been an ally and member here and there throughout the years. And before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, be sure to show up by clicking that like, and we've got a little announcement for you. We have a new channel coming your way. What? It is called Top 10 Nerd Elite, and if you want all that good bonus content, you need to go over there and you need to subscribe. Number 8. SYNCH. Everett Thomas just recently saw an amazing power boost in the comics. So amazing in fact that it actually took me forever to collect the issue in which it was featured, issue 18 of the previous X-Men run from 2019. Don't worry though, I finally tracked it down, so my collection as such is complete. Perfect. And honestly, I get why it was such a highly coveted issue. It also features SYNCH's rainbow aura that shines through when he is using his ability and syncing up with other mutants. Up until recently, SYNCH's powers gave him the ability to temporarily take on the powers of mutants near him, syncing up with them. But as of issue 18, he can now sync up with any superhuman being. And it's also been implied before that with more experience, he could take on the powers of others for longer and perhaps even permanently. Number 7. Wolverine. He's the best there is at what he does, bub. So of course Logan has to make our cut. Wolverine is one of the most popular mutants and X-Men members out there the world over, which gives him a pretty big boost when it comes to what he's capable of. Wolverine might not be Omega or even Alpha level, but he never backs down from a fight, and is not to be underestimated, as he's probably one of the most determined and often noble heroes around. Sure, you might be able to beat him initially, but due to his insane healing factor, Wolverine will often just get back up and keep coming back for more. He's also a super skilled fighter. On more than one occasion, he's taken a bullet to the head and after a few moments managed to recover and get right back up. In alternate realities, we've also seen Wolverine bombarded with energy blasts until he was nothing more than a skeleton, and he still managed to come back from that. Wolverine is tough as nails, but with a heart of gold, which is what makes him such a great X-Men member and just an overall great character. Number 6. Polaris. Polaris is the daughter of Magneto, and with that comes a lot of power and honestly probably a lot of pressure as well. Still, Lorna handles the pressure fairly well and all the other stuff that comes with being Magneto's daughter, like her mind being manipulated when she was a child. Okay, so maybe she didn't handle that whole reveal so great, but she definitely shows just how resilient she can be whenever she has to deal with some of the more challenging parts of being Magneto's heir. Polaris' powers are similar to her father's, allowing her to manipulate magnetic fields, and she is considered an alpha level mutant. More recently in the comics, while using her abilities and with the help of Krakoa, she built the X-Factor's new headquarters on the Mutant Island Nation all in one night. Pretty impressive stuff. Number 5. Juggernaut. Juggernaut is one of the most powerful characters out there in the comics, and while he might not be a mutant and is known for being in fact a longtime X-Men villain, neither of these things stopped him from eventually joining the team. This was all around the time that Juggy had lost most of his powers, with Kane having a falling out with Sidorak and ultimately deciding to patch things up with his stepbrother Charles Xavier. He joined the X-Men and during his time there surprisingly made a good number of friends, including the mutant known as Squid Boy. Poor Squid Boy. R.I.P. Who would attempt to blow the whistle when he found Kane in a meeting with the Brotherhood. Kane actually was operating as a mole, hoping to play along long enough to learn of the Brotherhood of Mutants' plans and warn the X-Men of them. Such a tragic story! Number 4. Magneto. Magneto obviously has to make our cut. Despite being a powerful X-Men villain, like Juggernaut, he too has been an ally to the team and even at one point was a member. Magneto had a few instances where he worked alongside the X-Men and even at one point saved them from imprisonment. He eventually attempted to join up with them but was initially denied membership by Professor X. Later, however, Magneto would ally himself with the team during their time together on Battleworld and eventually would end up joining the team and acting as a leader of sorts after Professor X was injured. During his time on the team, Magneto would also become the teacher of the New Mutants, which I love. Number 3. Storm. Storm is of course one of the most powerful mutants out there, and definitely one of the most powerful X-Men members. Not just for her amazing powers either, but also for her skills as a leader and a fighter. Recently during the pre-Hellfire Gala issue of Marauders, in honor of their valuable teammate Storm, the Marauders came together to share their favorite Storm stories and moments. We also learned just how dangerous Storm can be even without her powers, and as awesome as she is with them, I think some of my favorite Storm moments recently have actually involved her fighting hand to hand, or with her famous and perhaps endless supply of knives. We still don't really know for sure how many knives Storm has on her at all times. At the very least, we know it's 8 though. And if you want to check out that very heavy Storm issue of Marauders, you can check it out in issue 20. Number 2. Marvel Girl. Marvel Girl is one of the greatest and most powerful X-Men members out there, and really no powerful X-Men members list can be complete without her. Sadly, sort of, as I did want Storm to take my number 1 spot on this list honestly. I was really like, I really want to make Storm number 1. Jean Grey has done a lot of good and a lot of bad, but whatever side she happens to be on as Marvel Girl, Phoenix, or Dark Phoenix, the fact remains that she's always pretty unstoppable. Unless, of course, she wants to be stopped. Even back when she was originally introduced in the comics, back in issue number 1 of the Uncanny X-Men, she stood out, at least to me, as having the most potential in terms of her powers and power levels. Of course, then she'd later succumb to a bit of Princess Peach syndrome, as she would constantly be the member of the team who'd get kidnapped or in some cases be rendered useless because of the limits of how much she could mentally lift being tied to how much she could physically lift, which I don't know, doesn't seem like it should be a thing, but it was a thing at the time. Though later on her limitations could probably be explained away by the mental blocks Xavier had placed in Jean's mind to protect her and others from her insane raw power, which we'd learn about later, of course. And friends, if you also love Jean Grey as much as we love Jean Grey, we also have a really awesome Jean Grey alternates list, so if you want to learn about more powerful versions of her, you should go check that out. It's a good time. Number 1. Tempus. Just because it's hard for me to always succumb to Jean being number 1. Even though I know she deserves it, I know she's number 1, we have Tempus at her number 1 spot today. Because Tempus could literally undo anyone just like that. Like she did with Matthew Malloy, who is set up to be pretty much the most powerful mutant in all of existence, I'd say. His reality manipulation was off the charts. And yet Tempus was able to defeat him by traveling back in time to make sure his parents just never met. Her ability allows her to create time bubbles in which she can control the flow of time. She can slow or speed up time as much as she wants within the bubbles, and can also use her chronokinesis powers to time travel. Time travel initially for Tempus was a little tricky, as her emotions have been shown to affect her abilities, but she has also spent years working to hone them. So at this point in time, she's definitely someone you wouldn't want to piss off. Otherwise, you might go to bed one night and then never wake up again, because Tempus decided to erase you from existence.
Starting off at number 10, we have Forget-Me-Not. I wanted to start this list off really small, with a character y'all may not know. Mainly because almost no one knows him because that's his power. Appearing in 2014, Forget-Me-Not had actually been a member of the X-Men for several years before this, but thanks to his abilities, no one can remember him. Forget-Me-Not's abilities make it so that he is imperceptible in all forms, basically. The power is so good that even Charles Xavier himself had to place a psychic reminder on himself so that he would remember Forget-Me-Not's existence. Clearly that means some of the most powerful telepaths have difficulty discovering him, let alone remembering him. His power is to be forgotten, but the unique ways this power could be used, and the uniqueness of this power in general, will keep him in my mind. Number 9, we got Eye-Boy. Why is a guy named I-Boy on a list of strongest members of the X-Men? I see you, like many of the other mutants, are very judgmental. Trevor Hawkins' body is covered in eyes, 57 to be exact, which give him an array of powers that honestly, you kinda may expect. Microscopic, telescopic, X-ray, night, infrared, and thermal vision are all a part of his power list. But he can also detect chemicals, is an excellent marksman, and is skilled in nonverbal communication. He can almost read other people's minds by reading their behaviors and body language. He is an incredible tracker. He can predict attacks and can read people's histories just by looking at them. He can pinpoint weak spots in machines and people, is able to see electronic wavelengths and microwaves, is able to see past illusions and disguises as well as magic waves. He makes an amazing detective, in short. On top of all that, he can even pass what he sees onto others, but he has to be physically close enough for it to work. But to top it all off, the craziest and most unexpected power he possesses recently is solar blasts. We don't know how just yet, but Trevor can emit intense bursts of bright yellow energy and focused beams of extrastellar force that cause sunburns and radiation poisoning. Coming in at number 8, it's GWENPOOL. I think GWENPOOL has one of the strangest powers. That would be the power of medium interaction, which is because she comes from a reality very much like ours, as in superheroes are fictional people in comic books. So, when Gwen was transported to a pocket universe that recreated her home reality, Gwen's perception of the fictional world allowed her to gain the ability to recognize and manipulate the artistic medium that she was now in. She can see and physically interact with lettering and caption boxes, and touch and even break through panel gutters, allowing her to transport objects short distances through space and time by moving them across panels, and she interacts with different instances of herself from multiple panels on the same page. Now, I don't know if you've realized this, but this kind of means Gwendolyn Poole can kind of warp reality in a way. She kind of becomes one of the most crazily powerful characters in comics, at least potentially. She first showed up in Howard the Duck Volume 6 number 1 in November of 2015, and she has actually teamed up with many different characters and teams, including being a member of the X-Men on and off again. Number 7. Laura Kinney. I know, she isn't really new as a character, but Laura Kinney, or X-23, has become the all-new Wolverine, and that is relatively new. She officially joined the X-Men as this Wolverine at the Hellfire Gala in 2021. There are a few characters with powers similar to Wolverine, and there are even a few who are clones of Laura herself. But of all these characters, Laura is certainly the best and definitely the most fan-loved. Her powers are very similar to Logan's, with her primary mutant power being an accelerated healing factor. And obviously, she also has retractable bone claws, only she has 2 in her forearms and 1 in her foot. Well, each foot. She was obviously a clone and grew up being made to be a weapon, so of course she has an extremely haunted past. But with Logan as a father figure in her life, she grew up under him, and she even did the same for Gabrielle Kinney, another clone who Laura considers to be her younger sister. She's already done so much, but I just kinda can't wait to see what else she does as Wolverine. Number 6! It's SYNCH. Everett Thomas isn't a new character by any means, being first introduced in 1994, but while he was a part of Generation X, he didn't officially land on the team until this newest iteration of X-Men. He was also one of the first mutants resurrected by the Five on Krakoa, due to the fact that his powers could enable him to act as a substitute for any of the Five who might need to tag out. With that said, what are his powers? SYNCH's powers are known as synchronistic power replication. SYNCH basically produces this really cool funkadelic looking aura that allows him to synchronize with other supers in his vicinity, letting him use their powers unless they leave the vicinity. But what's really interesting is that he doesn't need that person to be completely there. So if you had like a tissue sample from a superpowered person, he could sync with that and it would be enough. Since his resurrection, his powers have been amped up, giving him a limited memory bank of powers he's synced with. He became an official base member of the new X-Men team announced at the Hellfire Gala alongside Laura Kinney in X-Men Volume 5 number 21 in 2022. Number 5. ZORN. Question: what would you do if you and your twin brother developed the mutant ability of having your head become a star? Answer: I honestly don't know how you would still be alive to decide what to do in the first place. Shen Zorn and his twin brother Quan Yin Zorn both developed mutant powers that, in essence, were tiny stars that burned away and replaced their actual heads. They were both isolated, and they both wear super cool looking iron helmets with power dampeners to contain their power from doing too much damage. Shen Yen is called Zorn with a Z, and his head is actually technically a black hole. And to keep things not confusing, Kuan Yin is also named Zorn, but with an X. Okay, so what the heck can they do with their powers? Well, both of these characters can produce gravitational electromagnetism, which could actually allow them to heal others and use telepathy, and also, really weirdly, somehow allowed them to sense when people died and speak using shaking gravitational particles. Zorn, the one with a Z, could suck people into his black hole and even turn his black hole back into a sun. They could also both obviously do a lot of damage, using the power of a star to burn, blind, and incinerate people. They both became members of the X-Men at different times. X-Zorn was the first in 2002, but he wasn't always good. And his brother, Z-Zorn, joined more than a few years later. Number 4, it's Dupe. First appearing in X-Force number 116 in 2001, Dupe's origin story is kind of hard to explain, because we don't know for a fact what it is. Captain America tells us he was a US Cold War weapons project, and he apparently had some kind of role in the fall of communism. He was originally a member of X-Force until eventually becoming a member of X-Static. For such an unthreatening character, Dupe is surprisingly strong. He has been described as being an extra-dimensional being with a genius-level intellect, bordering on possible omniscience. And he has a large array of psionic powers, one of which includes controlling Russians. He can change his size and shape at will, allowing him to heal wounds and reassemble parts of his body if they have been removed or cut off. He has an incredible level of super strength and durability as well, with an unknown limit, being able to match and overcome Thor in a fight when he was in a weakened state, taking hits from Mjolnir while he did so. He seems to be able to come back from the afterlife, and he also has a pocket dimension inside himself that he can store things in and summon creatures from. He can also completely break the fourth wall and go across the comic panels. Dupe has defeated the devil all by himself. He is overpowered, and I don't know how anyone loses with him on their team. Coming in at number 3, it's Tempus. Eva Bell first was seen in All New X-Men number 1 in 2012, when we also saw her mutant powers manifest. She was out with friends and a boy when her brother showed up and began to get into a fight with that boy. The stress and duress of the situation caused her powers to pop off, and she completely froze everyone within a city block of her in time for 20 hours, until the X-Men showed up, helped her, and then took her in. She's been referred to as near Omega level, with her ability of chronokinesis within a time bubble, meaning she can freeze and slow down time and is one of the best at it in the world. She can also speed up time in the bubble by decades if she chooses to, which is why she's a member of the Five, to age up whoever is being resurrected. And she can even time travel. Although she has shown to lose control over this power from time to time, there is no doubt she is and can become more incredibly powerful. Number 2, Elixir. Joshua Foley, otherwise known as Elixir, is a mutant with Omega level healing abilities. He's incredibly powerful, and while originally was just considered a general threat, he can actually use his powers offensively as well, completely ending lives if he wants to. Using his mutant ability of biokinesis, Elixir is capable of controlling the biological structure of his own and other people's bodies down to the genetic level. Now this started off small, but has grown to allow him to simultaneously heal dozens of people, resurrect himself and others, and even the ability to control, manipulate, and absorb the life forces of other living creatures. Offensively, he can use his death touch to harm others, to cause different types of illness, massive swellings, and organ failure. He's even completely destroyed the body of enemies before. He is one of the core members of the Five, as I'm sure no one is surprised about, and he has been a member of the X-Men ever since he was one of the only surviving mutants who retained his powers at the Xavier Institute after M-Day, and he was trained to become one in 2006's New Mutants. Number 1! Hope Summers. Hope Summers was the first mutant born after the events of M-Day, the mutant decimation, or the day that Scarlet Witch cast No More Mutants. She was then taken into the far future and raised by Cable, being carried around in the coolest baby Bjorn you'll ever see. Not too long after, she returned to the present and her mutant powers finally activated. Her power is basically that of Omega level power manipulation. She can manipulate the powers of other mutants nearby to her, even mimicking their powers, but at full capacity and and with complete control over those powers. And she can even take on multiple powers at once, but it is pretty tiring for her to do that. A large part of her role in the Krakoan society is as the leader of the Five, who use their abilities to resurrect the mutants of Krakoa. Her role on the Five specifically is both to boost their powers to their full potential and help them work in synergy with each other perfectly. She also helped terraform Mars alongside Vulcan and Proteus, giving them enough power to actually do it. She is such a cool character, and she first appeared back in X-Men Volume 2 number 205 in 2008, but was a child for much of that until she came of age and joined X-Force and the X-Men. Coming in at number 10, it's Pickles. I think his name alone just made me want to include him on this list. Pickles is what is known as a BAMF, a race of demons who are basically little Nightcrawler-like imps, who possess similar attributes and powers as Nightcrawler and Azazel. Pickles himself lived inside Beast's van and was a backup in case anyone needed immediate transport somewhere, but he would later travel with Jean Grey and the X-Men in Jean Grey number 1 from 2017. As a BAMF, Pickles can teleport by displacing himself into the Brimstone dimension, travel through it, and then return to the original dimension at a certain distance from the point of departure. But unlike Nightcrawler, Pickles doesn't require foreknowledge of his destination in order to safely teleport there. But much like Nightcrawler, Pickles can stick to objects with the surface of his hands and feet, and he's got a sweet little prehensile tail. This little imp also possesses an unknown degree of muscle memory mimicry, which enables him to quickly learn and perform new martial arts with little instruction or training. He's definitely one of those few minor X-Men characters, but he's just so cute. Number 9. Gazing Nightshade. First appearing in X-Men Blue number 6 in June of 2017, the Madripoor mutant calling herself Gazing Nightshade was part of a ruthless mutant vigilante group who were inspired by Wolverine called the Raksha. The group was stopped by Jimmy Hudson and the X-Men and eventually were invited to the X-Mansion. Gazing Nightshade has the really cool mutant ability of despair inducement, meaning whoever Nightshade gazes upon enters into a trance-like state of sorrow, fueled by their deepest regrets. And to make it just 10 times more metal, both the eyes of Gazing Nightshade's victims and her own eyes bleed when she uses her powers. I mean, that's not the coolest thing. She joins Polaris' makeshift roster of X-Men in X-Men Blue number 25 in 2018 before going back to the Raksha. Number 8. TRINARY. Shilpa Khatri first showed up in 2018's X-Men Red number 1 as a new mutant joining Jean Grey's team of X-Men. Shilpa was a young mutant from India who developed technopathic mutant abilities, and first used them to top up the bank accounts of every working Indian woman using the money from 25 of the biggest earning CEOs in India. That's pretty cool. And while I think that's awesome and kind of hilarious, her father did not, and he reported his own daughter to the Indian Mutant Defense Force, which is where Jean Grey and her team rescued TRINARY from. As a technopath, she has the ability to psychically control all forms of technology, such as computers, cell phones, and all that junk. Her limitation at this time is that she can only control technology that is in her line of sight, and her range is currently undetermined, but judging from other technopaths, she has potential to get much stronger. It just remains to be seen. Number 7. Gabby Kinney. We included Laura Kinney on the last list, so is it cheating to use her clone? I personally say no, because Gabrielle Kinney, aka Honey Badger and recently Scout, is just awesome. Like a little feisty killing machine with adamantium bone sickles and crazy regenerative healing factor, and that also improves her strength, speed, and stamina. Gabby first appeared in All New Wolverine number 2 in 2015, and she had a long history that, just like her other clone sisters, intertwined a lot with Laura, her genetic sister, and Wolverine, her genetic father. As Honey Badger, Gabby was seemingly a favorite of her sister, and basically became a sidekick to Laura Kinney, joining Jean Grey's X-Men alongside her sister in X-Men Red number 1 in 2018. While Laura went on to become the new Wolverine, Gabby would go on to become Scout, and one of the main Wolverine family members. Oh, also her and Jonathan the Unstoppable, an actual Wolverine, like the animal, shared an immediate bond, and he is basically her pet, which is both really cool and kind of hilarious. Number 6. Gentle. Although Nesno Abidemi, son of a Wakandan woman and a Russian man, first appeared in 2006, he was only a student at the Xavier Institute until he joined the X-Men in 2009's Uncanny X-Men. Because of his father, Gentle was never treated right in Wakanda. even by his own mom, which is a little hypocritical because, you know, she got pregnant with a dude, but whatever. He was raised at the Wakandan royal court and was sent to the Xavier Institute by Aurora Monroe when his powers first manifested. Gentle's mutant ability is muscle mass expansion, which allows him to increase his size and strength almost instantly. He's done battle with a Sentinel, and his strength is said to rival Colossus, with his resting strength increasing every time he uses his powers. Because of his poor treatment though, he suffered from psychological trauma, which caused him to suffer great pain and seizures. To help his condition, Gentle's entire body was covered with vibranium tattoos to prevent him from overexerting, and they essentially keep him alive, with the added side effect of looking sick. Number 5. Oya. When Hope Summers came back from her future travels with Cable, there were 5 mutants whose X gene and abilities activated. These 5 were known as the Lights, and they were the first mutants since the events of M-Day, making them pretty important. Ide Onkokwo was 14 years old, living in Nigeria's Delta State when her mutant powers of thermokinesis activated, causing her to accidentally burn down her village. She was almost taken out by the military until the X-Men showed up to save her. Now, under the direction of Hope, and with the consent of Cyclops, the Lights began training as a rescue team for any other new mutant manifestations. Idea's ability of thermokinesis allows her to alter temperatures around her, with the limitation being that she cannot simply create hot or cold temperatures. She can only rechannel pre-existing temperature, meaning she needs the presence of heat to generate cold, and cold to generate heat, and vice versa. Oya first appeared in Uncanny X-Men number 528 in September of 2010. Number 4. Armor. Hisako Ichiki lived in Tokyo, Japan with her brother and parents when her mutant abilities activated, and she joined the Xavier Institute. She first appeared becoming just a student and member of Kitty Pryde's Paladin Squad in Astonishing X-Men Volume 3 in 2004, and would go on to become a member of the New X-Men after participating in Emma Frost's Battle Royale in New X-Men Volume 2 number 23 and 26. But finally, she officially joined the main X-Men team in Astonishing X-Men Volume 3 number 25 in 2008. Hisako's powers are pretty cool. As you might suspect from her name, Armor can generate strong, powerful, durable, and impenetrable psionic exoskeleton armor around her entire physical body that augments her strength, endurance, stamina, agility, invulnerability, and durability. The power of her abilities are greatly tied to her family and bloodline. So, for example, the strength, power, and size of her psionic armor greatly enhances when her relatives pass away. Which, I mean, if she was a villain, that could go south pretty quick. But luckily she's not, so we're good. Number 3. Bloodstorm. This is probably a bit of a spicy choice for this list. Bloodstorm is none other than Aurora Monroe, only she is from a different universe. Earth 21710 to be specific. This version of Aurora was a thief living in the streets of Egypt when she attempted to pickpocket a man who turned out to be Dracula. She was turned into a vampire and eventually managed to free herself from Dracula's control and find new purpose among the X-Men. Unfortunately for her though, her thirst for blood overpowered her, which resulted in her ending at least both Beast and Professor X. But it could have been more. She was recruited by the Goblin Queen of Earth 91240 as one of her Hexmen, and they invaded Earth 616, where Bloodstorm decided to switch sides and help the time-displaced X-Men Blue team. She was eventually recruited to the team by Cyclops. Now this is obviously Aurora Monroe, and even if she is from another universe, she is still extremely powerful. But on top of that, she has all the powers of vampirism, including being capable of transforming her body into mist and a flock of bats, and using her gaze to hypnotize people into doing her bidding. Number 2. Genesis. Honestly, don't know how y'all are gonna feel about this one. Evan Sabanur was created by Phantom X as a clone of Apocalypse, and as such has a lot of his powers, including superhuman strength, superhuman durability, and self-molecular manipulation, meaning Evan has total control over the molecular structure of his own body, enabling him to alter his form at will. He is able to transform his limbs into various weapons and equipment such as blades and bludgeons for combat, or rocket boots for flight, as well as being able to alter his body to change in size. Evan also has a healing factor that can regenerate from serious injury like getting gashed by Daken's claws. And he can adapt his body to any disease or environment at will, and sometimes subconsciously. Another small, innocent ability Evan has is the potential for virtually any conceivable superhuman power ever. He once showcased fire or plasma breath when fighting Faithful John's mind drones, and also has a degree of energy projection, able to project dematerializer blasts from his eyes and emit energy blasts from his hands. He first appeared in Uncanny X-Force number 7 in 2011, but wasn't on the X-Men team until 2014, and even then, kind of as a student. As the clone of Apocalypse, Evan will potentially develop any of the powers possessed by him, but it also means people do fear him, which leaves him with a bit of an insecurity. And number 1, Darwin. Even somewhat casual fans of the X-Men know who Darwin is, if only because he was that guy who is supposed to be able to adapt to anything but gets de-lifed in like 2 seconds in the X-Men First Class movie. People were mad. And honestly, yeah, so was I. That makes no sense. Adapt to this, shut up. He literally could have. Armando Munoz, or Darwin, was first introduced in X-Men Deadly Genesis number 2 in December of 2005, and he would join the X-Men shortly after that. Darwin's powers are just the coolest. He's able to adapt to any situation, so basically, using his powers, he's been able to grow functioning gills after being submerged in water, gain night vision after being in the dark for several seconds, be able to survive without oxygen when in space, his skin has become fireproof when it's exposed to flames, and after touching Hela, Darwin became a death deity and gained powers similar to Hela, including immortality, Asgardian physiology, and control over life and death. There was even a time his intelligence increased itself to understand the Shi'ar language by looking at it in written form, although sometimes his powers do not always take the effect he wants, like, for example, during his fight with the Hulk, his body teleported him away from the battle rather than supplying a power that would actually allow him to defeat the Hulk, which is kind of hilarious to be honest.
Number 10, Gambit. Gambit might not be the most powerful mutant on this list, and may sometimes be more of a background member of the team in terms of what he's up to or just in terms of fighting, but he has a lot of potential. We've seen alternate realities where the full potential of Gambit's powers were realized, putting him at an almost god level in terms of what he was actually capable of. Gambit's powers allow him to supercharge objects with kinetic energy, causing them to explode through accelerating the molecules that make up said object. He can do this to something small or something large, but the bigger the object, the longer it can take for him to charge it. He has, however, proven how dangerous he can be even just by charging smaller objects that can get up close to vital areas, such as your face and your neck, like necklaces or earrings. Boom. I would not want him to supercharge any of the object close to my face. None of my pins, please. They're like right over my heart. Yikes. Number 9, Ink. Not all X-Men members are mutants, and Ink is one prime example. Ink actually did believe he was a mutant initially, and so did the rest of the X-Men, until we learned that his tattoo artist was actually the mutant in this scenario. Through his mutant tattoo artist, Ink has different tattoos, and each give him a different power. He has even managed to channel the powers of the Phoenix Force before through a Phoenix tat, which was over his eye. Basically, with Ink, he can have any power that his tattoo artist, Leon Nunez, gives him. We haven't seen him for a while, but he was listed in the Ten of Swords event handbook as being an active member of the X-Men, so we can assume he's somewhere on Krakoa, mostly chilling probably, but still available to use his tattoos and his powers when needed. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, be sure to let us know, because I want to do a part 3. I got a lot of mutants, and I want to talk to you about them. We also have a new channel, it's called Top 10 Nerd Elite, and you need to go check it out and subscribe for all of the good bonus content. We're gonna have lots of exciting things on there, so go subscribe now and be ready. Number 8, Cyclops. Not just powerful because of his optic blasts, but Cyclops also brings the power of his amazing tactical and leadership skills, which also adds to his power and makes him a more valuable X-Men member. I actually also just got a really cool, I just ordered like a Cyclops pin. It's gonna have his optic blast like going outside of the border of the pin. I'm so excited for it to arrive. Initially in the comics, when Cyclops first appeared, he was also made out to be the most powerful member of the team, with his optic blast being considered to be one of the most useful powers when it came to fighting enemies. At least that's what it seemed like. Every time they had someone really strong, they're like, Cyclops, use your optic blasts! Or initially they didn't call them optic blasts, but that's what we call them now, so. Cyclops is also a master of trigonometry and knows how to fire an optic blast to hit just about anything due to his insane math skills. That's truly mathematical. Number 7, Kate Pryde. Kitty Pryde, as she was once known, or Shadow Cat, is an immensely powerful mutant who can make herself and others intangible. As such, Kate proves to be a very skilled fighter when integrating her abilities into her fighting styles. She's also a protege of Wolverine's, and you can definitely see that when it comes to some of her fighting skills and some of her moves. Kate now also holds a position of power power on Krakoa, being a member of the Hellfire Trading Company, and allying herself with Emma Frost, the White Queen, in becoming the Red Queen of that company. Due to her unique abilities, Kate is unable to use Krakoan gates, and this is almost something that caused her to be unable to emerge from her pod when being resurrected after dying in the comics. Kate can phase people and objects and has managed to phase a giant bullet through the Earth, saving all life on it, and, while Power Boost, also phased an entire planet through an amber casing. Number 6. Professor X, or just X as he's sometimes known now. Professor X has always been thought of as one of the most powerful members of the X-Men. He was the first leader and teacher of the team who not only pushed his mutants to be better, sometimes controversially so, but also showed up initially to save the day when an opponent proved to be too challenging for the heroic youngsters. Professor X can also shut off your brain, he can make you forget who you are, so he's definitely not someone you'd want to fight. Unless you got a really strong mind, I guess. Professor X has low-level telekinetic skills and powerful telepathic skills that allow him to manipulate, alter, and probe the minds of others, as well as communicate telepathically from a great distance and sense other mutants. He also is now pretty much permanently wearing Cerebro, so he's got a pretty big boost to his power levels, also acting as the important Google Drive of sorts for the mutant minds on Krakoa, so that if they die, he can use a backup of their mind to resurrect them. So he's pretty important. Number 5. Iceman. Of course Iceman has to make our cut this time around. Bobby has had such a glow up when it comes to his powers and what he's capable of since he first appeared in the comics. At one point he managed to create a flash freeze so powerful that he successfully temporarily froze over all of Hell, or a version of Hell at least. It's kinda hard to tell in Marvel Comics sometimes. He's also managed to change states, allowing him to travel vast distances quickly as he moves through and as water. He can also manipulate water as well as ice and snow. Not only that, but he's managed to use his powers to create clone-like life forms, creating ice or snow clones to aid him and his allies in battle. Iceman has come a long way from being a snowman lookalike sporting his little black booties in his early days. I do miss those black booties though. Where they at? Number 4. Rogue. Rogue is definitely one of the most powerful mutants out there. She also happens to be one of my all-time favorites. Something about wanting to be closer to people but always kind of feeling like you were so removed from them or had to for some reason keep your distance. The idea of like guarding yourself. Those feelings of isolation just really spoke to me, and honestly still sometimes do. Although it should be noted that Rogue has since come much more into her own, with her gaining more control over her power, meaning that she is no longer as burdened with having to worry about hurting those she cares for. Rogue's powers allow her to absorb the powers and even memories of others through touch, and abilities too, so it's not just like superhuman people that she can take the skills of. She can take on multiple powers at once, but the setback is that her touch can also drain the life force energy of whoever she makes contact with. I mean, drawback and a plus in some cases. It turns out that the loss of control of her powers came from a very real place for most of us. Her own fear of being close to people, of intimacy, and of acceptance. For Rogue, she just had to make the choice to accept herself and not be afraid, and it was through that self-realization, that basically therapeutic work, that she was able to take control of her abilities. So if you see her making out with Gambit a ton in the comics recently, that's why. And if you see Rogue coming your way, you don't have to be afraid. Unless you're one of the baddies, of course. And then be afraid. And probably run. Number 3. Moira X. Moira X is also known to many of us still by the name Moira McTaggart. Though it was unknown for many years, Moira herself is a mutant. She was thought to be a human member and ally to the X-Men for many years, but in House of X it was revealed that Moira is actually a mutant whose power is reincarnation. But not in the traditional sense of reincarnation. After Moira dies, she doesn't just come back to life as like a new person, she lives her life all over again from the beginning. According to Destiny, Moira will likely only live through 10 lives, perhaps 11 if she makes the right plays, meaning that she isn't immortal, but she does bring with her to each life more and more knowledge in terms of how events can play out, which has brought us to the life and reality that she exists in today, with the fantastically powerful mutant island nation of Krakoa. Krakoa basically would not exist without Moira, which to me seems pretty powerful. All that knowledge. And I see her with Destiny's journals. What is she doing? What's going on? Number 2. Kid Omega. Kid Omega is Quentin Quire, another very feasible Phoenix Force host. Despite being younger and somewhat less experienced, and the running gag at the beginning of the Dawn of X era where he'd pretty much die each issue, he is still considered to be extremely powerful. Quentin is an Omega level telepath and telekinetic. He is also hyper intelligent due to his capacity to think at high speeds and the way his mind mind organize his thoughts. He can accomplish feats that not even the immensely powerful mutant Rachel Summers could manage, which is pretty impressive. Rachel Summers is also pretty powerful. Rachel Summers should also be on one of these lists. Number 1. Vulcan. Vulcan is pretty insanely powerful, and in a dangerous way too, because he's so capable of evil due to being manipulated during his time in the Vault. In fact, in Empire we saw a fraction likely of what his darker side was capable of when he ran into the Kotati while out for a walk on the blue area of the moon, where the Summers house is located. He attempted to deal with the situation peacefully when he approached them, showing mercy initially, but when provoked his darker side was unleashed, causing him to kill everyone save one member of the Kotati, who was left basically traumatized, uncontrollably uttering the word Krakoa on repeat. Vulcan is believed to be beyond even Omega levels when it comes to his powers.